Madison is just so cute. The voice becomes clear as the door opens. And at that name coming from Connor's mouth, I froze. I wondered who it could be, but hearing that name confirmed it. The woman's voice was indeed my sister Madison's. Connor foolishly kept calling Madison's name over and over. Shivering, I snapped to my senses. I realized I had to capture this scene on video. So, I firmly recorded the evidence on my smartphone and quietly left the spot. After a while, the two of them came out of the bedroom. Seeing me, they turned pale, and I said, "That's right. I sent the video of you two to Gabriel. Anyway, let's discuss what to do next among the four of us soon." At those words, Madison's face turned even paler. "What? What do you mean?" "Just what it sounds like. I've got the video as evidence." "What have you done?" As I held up my smartphone, my sister became utterly frantic. And then she lunged at me. "My name is Grace, a 45-year-old housewife. I have twin boys who are in the 6th grade of elementary school. The kids are twins. I've heard that twins run in families. And indeed, I am a twin myself. I have a twin sister named Madison. Being identical twins, we never really felt like sisters. Rather, we were more like rivals. Even if we weren't twins, it might have been the same. But I grew up always being compared to Madison. Before long, I harbored a strong complex towards Madison, and she, in turn, placed utmost importance on surpassing me. Madison was always the cute and affable child. On the other hand, I was always the shy and reserved one. And because I was also a bit of an introvert, everyone's attention naturally gravitated towards Madison whenever we met someone new. Even though we were rivals, I deeply adored Madison. Her ever-smiling face and popularity were something I aspired to. But it seems Madison didn't feel the same way. We used to play together a lot when we were in elementary school, but I was always stuck with the roles nobody wanted. Grace is it. When nobody wanted to be it in a game of tag, I was always the one forced into the role. Even when one of our friends suggested deciding by rock, paper, scissors, Madison would pressure me saying, "You want to do it, right, Grace?" Not wanting to be disliked by Madison or left out, I had no choice but to agree. Madison's manipulative behavior wasn't just limited to playtime. It was in 6th grade. We were deciding roles for a school play. We were going to perform Snow White, and I, not being much of an actress, hoped to be the narrator. But I caught a cold and had to miss school on the day of role assignments. "Grace wants to be the narrator. I'll tell the teacher for you." Madison said she'd pass on my wishes, so I trusted her and felt relieved. However, when I returned to school after recovering, I was shocked to find out I had been cast as the lead role. "Why am I the lead?" I asked a friend in disbelief. And then came the unbelievable reply. "Madison said you wanted to be the lead." "What?" "I didn't say that, but it's already been decided." It seems that as we were entering puberty, no one wanted to take on the potentially embarrassing lead role of Snow White. So I, the quiet girl who was absent, was chosen. The teacher found it odd that I, usually so reserved, had expressed a desire to take the lead role. Did Grace really say that? The teacher had even checked with Madison. "Truly, she wants to, but she's too shy to volunteer. Please let this be an opportunity for Grace to shine." But Madison recommended me as if it was all in my best interest. I cried, insisting I couldn't do it and didn't want to. However, everyone else's roles had already been assigned. Chastised by teachers and parents alike, I somehow managed to pull through. Thanks to that effort, the play was a huge success. Teachers, parents, and friends all praised me. But amidst all this, only Madison looked on displeased. Anyone could have done that. Getting all that praise for such a little thing is just silly. And so, she began to openly resent me. That was the moment I truly felt Madison's dislike. After that, she stopped inviting me to play. At first, it was painful, but once I realized I was no longer being forced into unpleasant roles, I made other friends and started enjoying myself. In middle school, many didn't even know Madison and I were twins. We had become so distant, hardly speaking at school, and didn't look alike at all. We requested not to be in the same class, and I was enjoying my own life. But then, one day, as I was studying for high school entrance exams, Madison approached me. "Studying? Have you decided which high school you're applying to?" "Yeah, thinking of going for a high school." A high school was the newest and closest school to our house, boasting a competitive entrance difficulty. I had been working hard for 3 years because I really wanted to get into that school. But Madison, unaware of my efforts, laughed when she heard my choice of high school. "A high school? You've got to be kidding, right? Why don't you just go to B high school with me? It sounds like you wouldn't even need to study much for that." Madison always managed to bend me to her will. But I didn't want her dictating my choice of high school, too. For the first time, I stood up to her. "I've decided to go to a high school. You don't know if it's impossible for me. If you don't want to study, that's fine, but don't get in my way." I turned away from her and went back to my textbook. "What? That tone to your older sister?" Angered by my response, Madison grabbed my textbook and threw it on the floor. "What are you doing? Even if you study, it's a waste, you know. You're destined to be my slave and go to B high school together." That day, we ended up in a physical fight. Our parents came running when they heard the commotion and pulled us apart, but by then my textbook was torn to pieces. But more than that, my heart was shattered by hearing Madison's true feelings about me. To Madison, I was just a convenient target for all the unpleasant things. Realizing that Madison saw me as her slave was a clear awakening. But I didn't give up on studying. Fortunately, my parents contacted the school for me, and I got a new textbook. With my parents' support, Madison no longer interfered with my studies, and I was able to dedicate myself to them and successfully got into my chosen school. As she had initially declared, Madison barely studied for the exams and went on to B high school. Thus, we went to different high schools, pursued our education at different universities, and eventually started our careers. As an adult, I began living on my own, and that's when I met a man. He was my husband, Connor. Connor and I were hired at the same time and felt a closeness because we were from the same area. When he asked me out, I felt like I was dreaming. "I actually like you, Grace. I'd be happy if you'd go out with me." Hearing those words made me incredibly happy. I had feelings for Connor too, but I had never had the courage to admit such feelings openly. I wasn't pretty like Madison, and having had almost no experience with love during my school days, I could hardly believe he felt the same way about me. "I'd be happy too. Thank you." Being in a relationship for the first time made me feel overjoyed. Since we started dating, I've been doing my best to make him happy, cooking meals and preparing lunch boxes for him. Connor started visiting my apartment more often, and we began a life almost like we were living together. "Grace, I'll cook dinner tonight." But it wasn't just me doing things for him. Connor was also very cooperative with household chores. Doing chores together was fun, and I began to think we could make a good married couple. 3 years into our relationship, we decided to get married. I was overjoyed and very happy about it, but there was one thing that worried me. You're a twin, right? I'd like to meet your sister. Connor brought it up. During the 3 years we were dating, I had told him that I have a twin sister, but I had never introduced him to Madison. I hadn't even told her about having a boyfriend. Since that big fight in middle school, there had been a deep rift between us. Yeah, that's right. But if we were getting married, it was inevitable that Madison and Connor would meet. The thought of how Madison might scorn us made me anxious, but I knew I had to introduce them at some point. What? Married? Since when? And when I finally called Madison after a long time, she seemed surprised by my news and raised her voice. I had told my parents, but it seems Madison hadn't heard about it yet. She sounded like this was news to her. Yeah, and I want to introduce Madison to the man I'm going to marry. I'm busy, you know. Well, if you insist, I guess I could meet him. Madison was as condescending as ever, so I asked her to make some time for us. Madison hadn't changed since we were kids. I figured I had to be the adult and humble myself. We went back home to meet Madison on her day off. Connor suggested we all have a meal together with our parents, so we arranged to meet at a restaurant. And then, on the day, we went to the restaurant. But even when the time came, Madison didn't show up. Madison's late. I thought she said she'd be on time. Sorry, Connor. Don't worry about it. She'll show up eventually. Let's just wait a bit longer. Both my parents and I felt bad for keeping Connor waiting. 15 minutes past the scheduled time, Madison showed up in a flashy dress. Sorry, did you wait? We did. What's with the outfit? Well, it's kind of like a meet and greet, right? Thought I should dress up. I couldn't help but be exasperated by her. Not just me, but our parents just gave a wry smile. If she knew it was a meet and greet, I wished she hadn't been late without even messaging, especially not for the sake of getting dressed up. Seemed immature for an adult. But, wanting to keep the peace, I swallowed my words. We introduced Madison and Connor to each other. Wow, Grace, you've snagged a good-looking one. Working at the same place means he must be earning well. Madison made several rude remarks to Connor on their first meeting. What do you do in your free time? With Grace. No, before you started dating Grace. She grilled Connor like it was a speed dating session. Despite our parents' attempts to stop her, Madison kept going, saying, "It's fine. I want to know what kind of man Grace's husband will be." Connor was gracious, saying, "Don't worry about it," and entertained Madison throughout. By the end of the meal, I was exhausted and sighing. However, it didn't end there. Madison's quite the character, huh? Opposite of Grace. I always say we're the least alike twins ever. When I responded with a forced smile, Connor said, "Maybe you should take a leaf out of Madison's book. She's always smiling, good at conversation, and cute." If I'd met her first. I was shocked at what he meant. I had told him about my discomfort with Madison. To hear him say this, knowing that, was deeply shocking. "Why don't you marry Madison then? She even said you were handsome." When I snapped back like that, he hurriedly apologized. Sorry. It was just a joke. I'm glad I met Grace, and I don't have any special feelings for Madison. Then you shouldn't say things that praise Madison and put me down. It was a joke. Connor apologized like that. I was shocked, but I wasn't going to call off our engagement over something like this. I just hoped he understood. Right after that, he said, "But Madison is a nice girl. It's not good to be jealous of your sister. Let's all get along as a family now. We're adults. Things are different than they were." I had my reservations, but I knew our parents wanted Grace and me to get along. But I wanted Connor to be on my side. Why was he trying to bring me and Madison closer? But it's not like we'd be interacting much anyway. Arguing seemed too troublesome, so I just nodded along to Connor's words. A few days later, I got a message from Madison. "Isn't Connor too good for you? Should I take him off your hands?" I was chilled by her message. "What are you talking about?" I replied instinctively, and she called immediately. "Just what I said. It's unbelievable someone as dull as Grace would get married before me." Madison insulted me over the phone and laughed. "He's high-earning and well-educated. Why not hand him over to me? We're twins. We've always shared everything. Don't say stupid things." I yelled back at Madison. I couldn't stand Connor being treated like an object, nor the notion that we had always shared everything. That's ridiculous. I was always just someone for Madison to dump the things she didn't want on. That night, I told Connor about this, warning him to be careful around Madison. But Connor seemed to take it lightly, laughing off my words. "It's nice to be like that much. Don't worry, Madison's not serious. It's not funny. You don't know what Madison might do. Do you doubt my feelings? It's okay because I said it's okay." Despite him being such a wonderful person, I felt like Connor had changed after meeting Madison. Connor would affirm everything when it came to Madison, just because she's my sister. Other than that, he was the same wonderful partner as always. But I was dissatisfied with how he changed whenever Madison was involved. "Don't worry so much." But as Connor said, if he himself didn't sway, there was nothing Madison could do. Feeling unsettled by her words was proof I hadn't fully trusted Connor. So I was admonished. Indeed, he was right. I decided to trust Connor and ignore Madison's words. Even afterward, Madison sent me spiteful messages, but I never replied. Fortunately, Madison didn't interfere with us, and I prayed we could become wonderful sisters while leading a happy married life. Years went by. After I turned 40, my parents told me that Madison had gotten married. By then, I had blocked her and wasn't in contact. Although we occasionally saw each other at our parents' home, Madison would insult me. Being nearly 40 and still unmarried, Madison had become resentful towards me, and it seemed she was avoiding me as well. I thought Madison, being quite picky, wouldn't marry, but I was genuinely glad for her when I heard she had found someone. I realized how terrible I had been when Grace got married, only after I got married myself. Moreover, through my parents, Madison apologized to me. After that, we started communicating again. Indeed, Madison had changed, becoming much calmer than before. It was as if she had returned to the Madison I once loved. I never thought the day would come when Madison and I could laugh together again, so I was very happy. Madison even introduced me to her husband. He was about 5 years our senior, named Gabriel. He seemed to care for Madison deeply, which reassured me. Having both married, Madison and I became closer. Our parents were very happy to see us getting along. I wanted to make up for the time we had spent apart. Then, a few years later, something happened. I became ill at work and had to leave early. I wanted to inform Connor, but he was out on business, so I left a message with a colleague. I went straight home. Upon entering the house, I immediately sensed something was off. It felt like there was someone inside, even though the house was supposed to be empty. Could it be a burglar? That thought flashed through my mind as I quietly entered. Listening closely, I could hear noises and voices coming from the bedroom. As I stood silently in front of the bedroom, I recognized Connor's voice coming from inside. But I couldn't bring myself to speak up. The nature of his voice drained the blood from my face. It was unmistakably the sound of an intimate moment. The creaking of the bed confirmed my fears. I didn't need to see inside to know what was happening, and my hands trembled. However, if Connor was cheating, I had to catch him in the act. With that thought, I carefully opened the door with my smartphone in hand, ready to record. What I saw inside the bedroom was even more shocking. "Madison is really cute, isn't she?" The voice became clearer as the door opened. Hearing Connor say her name, I froze. Now that he mentioned it, the female voice was indeed Madison's. Connor kept foolishly repeating Madison's name. Trembling, I recorded the scene and quietly left. I sat in the dining area in shock for a while. I was supposed to be home early due to feeling unwell, but that shock made me forget my illness. Staring blankly at my phone, I just waited for this nightmare to end. Then, a few minutes later, the bedroom door opened. "I'll head back to work now, so lock up," said a voice. "Okay. It'd be nice if we could live together soon." Hearing this, I hurriedly stood up. Noticing the noise, Connor and Madison saw me in the hallway. "Lee Grace, why are you here?" Connor exclaimed, turning pale. "Why? This is my house, right? But why is Madison here? Aren't you both supposed to be at work?" Madison looked away for a moment, but then smirked defiantly. "Why do you think? You wanted it from my own mouth, didn't you?" "Madison." Connor tried to stop her, but Madison wouldn't be silenced. "I've always hated how you look down on me. Happiness and Connor don't suit you. I'll take everything." With that, Madison declared. I just smiled at her words. "Is that so? Then I'll give you Connor, Lee Grace. But don't think you can take my happiness." Madison seemed annoyed by my retort, glaring at me. To that, I continued, addressing her directly. "Yeah, I sent the video to Gabriel. Let's discuss this as a group of 4 sometime soon." Madison's face turned pale instantly. "What do you mean?" "Just what I said. If you want Connor, Gabriel should know about this, shouldn't he?" "What have you done?" Madison lunged at me. "Madison, calm down." "How can I calm down?" Connor tried to stop her, but Madison was beyond reason. Just then, the smartphone inside Madison's bag rang. At that sound, Madison froze in place. "Looks like Gabriel's calling, isn't it?" Madison, pale-faced, hesitantly looked at her bag, but there was no sign of her answering the call. In the silent room, only the sound of the phone echoed. After a while, it stopped ringing, and then my phone rang. "See?" Since Madison didn't answer, now it's calling me. "Grace, I'm truly sorry. Please forgive Madison. Can you somehow cover for her with Gabriel? If not, Madison will lose everything." Connor started making statements as if to protect Madison. Madison, standing next to him, began to sob bitterly, as if she were the tragic heroine. What Connor said made sense. Actually, Gabriel is not only Madison's husband, but also the president of the company where she works. If Gabriel learns about Madison's infidelity, divorce talks might start, and she might not be able to continue working at his company. especially now, during work hours. There's no room for sympathy, though it seems harsh. She did this knowing full well she could lose everything. I can't possibly cover for her. I said that. That's too harsh. Connor, as usual, tried to defend Madison. His words infuriated me, and I glared at Connor. Worried about her? Thinking Madison is the only one who's going to lose her family and jobs is a huge mistake. At my shout, Connor flinched, then started sweating profusely. It was as if he suddenly came to his senses, starting to break out in a cold sweat. He must have understood the meaning of my words. Just so you know, I've also sent the video to the company's main email address, including your department and name. What have you done? By then, Gabriel's call had ended. Connor and Madison stood frozen with a look of despair. After kicking them out, I called Gabriel. Sorry to disturb you at work. It's about the video, right? Yes. It involves Connor, doesn't it? Yes, I replied to Gabriel's gentle voice. I'm sorry for asking this of you. He said that. Actually, Gabriel had consulted me because he felt something was off with Madison. It might have been plausible for the old Madison, but the current Madison truly loved Gabriel. I didn't think she would cheat, and I had conveyed as much to Gabriel. But, just in case, he had asked me to gather evidence if Madison did something questionable. That's why I think I was able to film calmly. Please don't apologize. I'm glad I could capture evidence of Connor's infidelity. If you hadn't asked me, I probably wouldn't have thought to do so calmly. I told Gabriel. It would be a lie to say I wasn't shocked. It's shocking enough to discover an affair, let alone with one's own sister. I had every right to be angry. My sons will be home soon, so let's talk another time. I told Gabriel and hung up. Tears flowed endlessly, but for my sons and for my own future, I knew I had to be strong. That day, I went about my usual routines. And when the kids had settled down for the night, Connor came home. Were you with Madison? I asked him, and Connor, clearly in a bad mood, snapped back at me. I got called into HR because of you. The decision on my punishment will come later. What are you going to do about this? The way Connor turned the blame on me, making me out to be the villain despite his actions, made me almost laugh. Crying over such a man was a waste of time. There's nothing to be done. Do as you please. You understand the situation, right? If we divorce, I'm taking the kids. Still want to divorce? His attempt to use our sons as leverage was pathetic, and I told him so. What are you talking about? You think you'll get custody after likely losing your job? Divorce is a foregone conclusion. Stop being ridiculous. Connor had nothing to say. Of course. Getting caught in adultery during work hours, dismissal seemed inevitable. Was he still so clueless about the gravity of his actions? If that's the case, then he's incredibly foolish. I'll be leaving tomorrow. Wait a minute. Can't we consider starting over? Can't you forgive just one affair? Connor, now taking a submissive stance, began apologizing to the assertive me. One time, I asked back. According to Gabriel, Madison's behavior had been odd for several months. Given Gabriel's job involves mostly being out for sales, there's a good chance she might have been returning home like this. Just one, Connor responded weakly to my question, his eyes darting around. From the lack of confidence in his answer, it was clear it wasn't just once. It felt ridiculous to pursue it any further, so I dropped the subject. The next day, I told my sons about Connor's infidelity. They are in 6th grade now, old enough to understand that hurting and betraying others is wrong. I apologized for having such a conversation at this sensitive time in their lives, and they said they wanted to talk it over alone and went to their room. After just a few minutes, they came out with their bags packed and said, "We're on your side, Mom." I couldn't help but cry. The boys laughed and comforted me as I apologized again. Then we went back to my parents' houses. My parents were speechless when they heard about Madison and Connor's actions. Despite being happy that we had become close as sisters again, I felt sorry, but Mom apologized to me, crying, "Madison hasn't changed after all. I'm sorry for always making you endure her." Cut ties with both Madison and Connor. "We will keep our distance from Madison to the bare minimum," Dad said, and I felt relieved. From that day, I started commuting to work from my parents' home. Connor, perhaps on suspension, didn't come to the office, but called me multiple times instead. Ignoring him as I didn't have time to deal with it, he began to send messages day and night. "I love you, Grace. Let's live happily as a family of 4 again." I was insane. I was just deceived by that woman. "I don't know how to live without you, Grace." Perhaps these were what you'd call Romeo emails. I was almost fooled for a moment. But thanks to my sons laughing uproariously at those messages, I realized how ridiculous they were. However, I couldn't ignore him forever. Eventually, I had to meet him to sign the divorce papers. I made plans to meet Connor at a cafe on my day off. Choosing to meet at a cafe instead of going home was Gabriel's advice. He said that being in a public place would help keep the conversation calm. When Gabriel and Madison arrived at the cafe together, Madison had become so thin in just a few days, she looked like a different person. She must have fallen out of favor with Gabriel. Serves her right. Now, both Madison and Connor, please sign the divorce papers. It seemed Madison was also reluctant to divorce. To the two hesitating to sign, Connor said, "It's a misunderstanding, Gabriel. It's your choice to divorce, but we won't." "Are you still saying that?" "My sons and I no longer consider you family," I retorted. I addressed Connor's desperate attempts. Gabriel sighed deeply and said, "You could go to court, but it's clear you'll lose. Considering the alimony and legal fees for the divorce trial, can you afford it?" "Alimony for the divorce trial?" "Of course. You both betrayed your families." Madison to me and Grace. "Connor, you'll have to pay us a proper settlement in the divorce trial." Madison started trembling silently. Her silence and weight loss now made sense. "What am I supposed to do? I might be fired." "How can I pay?" Connor began to argue, pale-faced. "You did this to yourself. Besides, you owe child support for both kids." "Right, Madison?" At my words, Madison flinched. "You wanted to live together, right? You're welcome to have the house." I laughed loudly. "And don't forget the mortgage payments." Connor was taken aback, probably having forgotten about the mortgage. Both sat sweating, pale and silent in front of the divorce papers. Later, Gabriel introduced me to a lawyer, and I managed to claim alimony and legal fees and finalize the divorce. Connor, who had resisted divorce so much, proposed to Madison immediately after our divorce was finalized. I knew he had liked Madison from the start. When did their affair turn serious? Hearing this, I felt nothing but disdain. Meanwhile, Madison, who had genuinely loved Gabriel, was abandoned and eventually lost her job too. Why did she end up with Connor despite loving Gabriel so much? Remaining puzzled, I asked Gabriel about it. He hesitated before revealing. Actually, she started complaining about you a few months ago. Really? Complaining about how you, who are useless, got married and even have kids. It's extravagant, he explained. Could it really be because of that? I wondered, but considering Madison's personality, it wasn't impossible. Yet, the thought that she went to such lengths just to set me up was horrifying. It was because I thought you might be in danger that I consulted Grace. But I never imagined it would lead to this with Connor. I'm truly sorry, Gabriel said apologetically. It's okay. It's over now. And Connor is to blame for taking up Madison's invitation as well. That concluded our conversation. Gabriel and I agreed to keep in touch for updates on the divorce compensation and legal consultations. According to him, the two, burdened with a substantial amount of divorce compensation, ended up marrying and living together. Madison was abandoned by her parents and had nowhere else to go. It seemed she reluctantly accepted Connor's proposal because she had no family left. From what the lawyer told me, Madison couldn't accept that she ended up divorcing Gabriel and marrying Connor, whom she didn't love, because of me. The lawyer mentioned getting hurled with abusive language every time he called her. While I felt sorry for the lawyer, he continued to support me firmly, perhaps because of Gabriel's presence, and I couldn't be more grateful. For a while, we'll still have to make calls to demand the divorce compensation, and it seems I'll continue to rely on their support. 5 years passed. The divorce compensation and child support were being paid on time, and my emotional wounds had largely healed. One day, after a long period of calm, the lawyer contacted me. Madison says she has something to talk to you about. I refused. Knowing her, it would likely end up with her using me as a verbal punching bag for stress relief. I decided never to trust or forgive Madison again, and asked the lawyer to convey my refusal. However, Madison insisted it was urgent, and Connor also requested a meeting on her behalf. Given their persistence, I reluctantly agreed. However, lacking the courage to meet them alone, I contacted Gabriel, feeling somewhat guilty for doing so after such a long time. He gladly agreed to accompany me, and so I met with them after a long while. Connor and Madison were sitting at the cafe with a solemn demeanor. When Madison saw my face, she looked slightly relieved. "What's this about? Why did you call me here?" I asked, and Madison said, "Actually, I've developed renal failure and need to undergo dialysis." I was taken aback. "It's your fault." "No, both of your faults, that Madison ended up like this. She couldn't sleep without drinking alcohol. And yet, because of the divorce settlement payments, she had to work. Your actions have destroyed her health." Connor angrily blamed us, but I thought it was their own doing. Gabriel seemed to agree, as he sighed and looked exasperated. "So what? I'm not reducing or refunding the divorce settlement. Be thankful I agreed to installments." I stood firm, and Madison, crying, lowered her head. "I'll pay the divorce settlement. Please, I'm begging you. Give me a kidney." "What?" I exclaimed loudly at her outrageous request. "What are you talking about? There's no way I'd give it to you." When I refused, Connor said, "You were born a twin with Madison for this reason. You have a duty to help her." "What are you talking about? Who has been pushing all the unpleasant things onto me? Did Madison ever help me once in such situations? Don't talk about trivial matters. Madison's life is at stake here." Connor angrily retorted. Madison began to cry and plead, apologizing. Connor insulted me as heartless, pressuring me for the transplant, as if threatening. At that moment, feeling as though I was being blamed, Gabriel spoke up. If she needs dialysis, then undergo dialysis. Do you understand how tough dialysis is? And do you understand how difficult a transplant is? Why should she risk her life for Madison? Their words left them speechless. I felt relieved with Gabriel's support and caught my breath. Moreover, Madison, you've repeatedly called Grace useless. Isn't it too convenient to ask for help only when you're in trouble? But Madison, you've destroyed Grace's happy life. Grace has no obligation to save your life. Madison broke down crying, and Connor was at a loss for words. Both of them must have thought that I would surely give them a kidney. If I had been alone, I might have been persuaded. Once again, Gabriel saved me. Take care then. Oh, and don't forget the transfer for this month's payment. With that, I got up and left. Whether I'm called heartless or a devil, I cannot forgive them both. I don't know what kind of life they will lead from now on, but I hope they never forget what they did and reflect on it. It seems Connor and Madison were both working part-time to make ends meet. But now that Madison can no longer work properly, their financial situation is dire. But that's their karma. Everything is the result of their actions. Their atonement won't end until they've paid the compensation ordered in the divorce settlement. I continue to live happily with my parents and sons. My parents no longer even mention Madison's name. However, it seems they are happy to see the twins getting along well. It's comforting to see a bond between my sons that Madison and I never had. I continue to keep in touch with Gabriel frequently. He's a genuinely good person, always thoughtful and considerate. It appears he has developed feelings for me, but I'm not ready to reciprocate them at this time. I don't want to cause any more upset for my sons, but in a few years, when they come of age, I hope to have the chance to think about my own happiness again.
Look at that broke company trying to act big. $300 in the bank. What a big joke. I'm here to withdraw $15 million. When I said that at the major bank, they looked down on me like I was some poor, insignificant business. The banker who served me this time had harassed me in the past too. I couldn't take it anymore. I decided I would give her a taste of hell and make her regret ever crossing me. My name is Letty Blythe. I'm 45 years old this year. Many of my peers are struggling to balance work with caring for aging parents, or are dealing with the loss of a parent and the changes that brings to family dynamics. But I lost both my parents when I was just 3 years old, so my memories of them are hazy at best. I have photos, so I know what they looked like. From what I can tell, they seemed like kind, gentle people. About a year after I entered the orphanage, one of the staff members told me, "Your parents were office workers and very hardworking. On their days off, they would take you to the zoo." But even hearing that, no memories of my parents came flooding back. Instead, most of my childhood memories are of the orphanage. After entering the orphanage, I was unbearably lonely being on my own. I loved animals. "I want to have a puppy." So little me would pester the staff, saying. But pets were strictly prohibited at the orphanage. So one of the staff gave me a stuffed dog toy instead. It had been sitting in storage and no other kid wanted it, but I instantly adored it. I basically never let go of that toy, carrying it with me everywhere. That much I remember clearly. Once I started elementary school, I did eventually resign myself to just keeping it in my room. But it remained my most cherished possession. Then, when I was in 5th grade, I got the idea to try making my own stuffed animals. I grabbed my school sewing kit and set to work crafting a stuffed puppy. It wasn't the prettiest thing. "You did such a great job on this." But one of the staff praised me, saying, encouraged by that, I threw myself into making more stuffed animals. I got better and better each time. By high school, I was so obsessed that I joined the handicrafts club. In my senior year, I won an award at a crafting competition. That inspired me to seek out a job in the textile industry after graduation. I've had a variety of experiences since then to get to where I am now at my current company. Looking back, I'm amazed at how far I've come, to be honest. I hope to continue making a living in the future with the crafting skills that have sustained me through life. At least, that's how I feel. But lately, I've been tormented by this one particular person. Her name is Clarice. Clarice is a 50-year-old banker who lives in the luxury condo building right across from my place. I, on the other hand, am not living in any fancy home like that. My apartment is old, built over 30 years ago, and costs $500 a month in rent. This area used to just be open fields with a scattering of houses here and there. But about 5 years ago, housing complexes and high-end condos started popping up one after the other. My apartment building has been here since way before all that development. It still remains, surrounded by these newer high-rise buildings, without ever being renovated itself. Some might think that with such a nice luxury condo right there, I should just move into that instead. At first, I did briefly consider moving. But I ultimately decided against it. The rent is just too expensive, and I don't need all the fancy amenities that come with a luxury condo. Those condos apparently have tight security, observation decks with great night views, party rooms, and 24-hour concierge service. But I'm not interested in hosting parties or admiring vistas. Plus, my landlord upgraded to high-security locks for each unit and installed security cameras out of crime concerns. My apartment doesn't have a grand entrance or anything, but for someone like me who doesn't keep expensive items at home, this is plenty. I can't justify paying over $2,000 a month in rent just to live in a luxury condo. Different lifestyles suit different people, after all. Clarice seems to be someone who likes surrounding herself with upscale things. The rings and necklaces she wears are all from high-end brands. Whenever she runs into me taking out the trash, "I just bought this new piece. I already got tired of the ring I got 2 months ago," she brags. At the same time, she looks down on me in my more modest attire. It's such a nuisance. "Aren't you embarrassed to go around dressed like that? Should I give you some of my designer items?" Actually, never mind. She made fun of me like this just last week. It was infuriating. On top of that, she knows my unit number. She probably saw me coming and going from my apartment by chance. Because of that, I had an exquisite French meal today. Ah, it was so delicious. She occasionally shows up at my door to boast. All I want is to relax at home, but having to listen to her insipid bragging ruins that. And she doesn't leave after 5 or 10 minutes. She blabbers on for over 20 minutes. When I saw that ring, I couldn't help but exclaim, "This is my destiny ring." Not destiny partner, destiny ring. Life can be funny like that, you know. She gets all worked up like this, talking in an overly loud, emotional voice. It bothers the neighbors. The walls in my apartment are thin, so if you're even a little loud, everyone can hear it. "Excuse me, there are other residents here too, so could you please keep your voice down a bit? Also, it's already 8 p.m. and I'd like to eat dinner." Even when I say this, she pays me no mind. I'm graciously sharing my superior knowledge with you, and this is how you act. Should I tell you about the necklace I'm wearing right now too? She says ridiculous things like this, completely unwilling to listen. The other day, my next-door neighbor Maurice got fed up. Hey! You're being too damn loud. Can't you see Letty doesn't want you here? And angrily came over. Seeing the intimidating Maurice, Clarice's face filled with fear. I am so sorry. She let out a shriek and then fled at full speed. I felt relieved. Heh, that was nothing. We neighbors gotta look out for each other. But what's the deal with you and her? Well, actually, I gave him a quick rundown about her. She's one of those luxury condo people. Bit of a local celebrity, huh? But why is she so fixated on you? It's not like neighbors get that close these days. So here's the thing. I could understand his confusion. It's extremely rare for someone to be this persistent in harassing a neighbor just for seeming poor. The reason things have escalated to this point is because I had a run-in with her in the past. It was about 6 months ago. I had business at a major bank branch, so I stopped by the teller window. The teller who assisted me that time was none other than her. She greeted me. Hello. But I got the distinct feeling she was looking at me with a condescending gaze. However, I hesitated to point that out to a bank employee I was meeting for the first time. I figured I was probably imagining it, so I started to tell her what I needed. I have a 1 p.m. meeting scheduled with the branch manager. I'm Letty Blythe. I was told to let the front desk know and I would be shown to the conference room. I didn't think I said anything strange, but Clarice suddenly blew up at me. Huh? Don't you lie to me. Ms. Blythe already arrived a long time ago. What? I was at a total loss, getting scolded like that out of nowhere. I mean, I wasn't lying at all. Flustered, I checked my schedule book, wondering if I had the date or time wrong. But no, I didn't. Could you please double-check? I should have a meeting scheduled in the conference room at this time. I politely repeated my request, but she still refused to listen. I'm telling you. You're just a fake one, aren't you? Enough with the lies, tell me the truth already. No, I am the real one. I had important business to attend to, so I couldn't just say okay then and leave. I even showed my ID, but she claimed that was fake too and refused to believe me at all. As I wondered what to do, the branch manager, having heard the commotion, came running over. I am so sorry, Ms. Blythe. Right this way to the conference room. He escorted me, so it worked out somehow. Later, I heard from the branch manager that a completely different person also named Blythe had a meeting scheduled with him from 12 p.m. that day. Clarice had been aware of that other Blythe, but had completely forgotten about my existence, apparently. After my discussion with the branch manager concluded, I sincerely apologize for the misunderstanding. She did apologize to me, but with a sullen look on her face. It didn't seem like she was truly remorseful, so my frustration wasn't entirely resolved. However, it would be pointless to expect a heartfelt apology from someone who gets that angry at a stranger over a misunderstanding. I came to terms with that and let it go. But then, a week later, as I was taking out the morning trash, Clarice came dashing out of the luxury condo across the street, eyes sparkling. I remember my body going stiff with fear. Can I help you? I live in this condo building. So you live in that apartment over there, huh? Turns out we're neighbors. Hearing that, I felt like I might faint. Sensing she was up to something, Clarice then said the most outrageous thing. You made me into a laughingstock. How are you going to make it up to me? Huh? Because of me. The root cause was her misunderstanding in the first place, so her resentment was completely misdirected. The branch manager scolded me, and regular customers said I was scary. It's all your fault. She glared at me with a look of bitter resentment, like a demon. From then on, she apparently saw me as her sworn enemy. She harasses me every chance she gets. It's a huge nuisance. I considered moving, but she only stops by 2 to 3 times a month at most. Factoring in the cheap rent and all, moving just because of her felt like a waste. Clarice herself seems to be keeping things to a level where I won't report her to the bank or be driven to move. I finally found a good little prey. I'm going to have so much fun tormenting you. She said creepy things like that with a grin. Some people might think it's better to move in that case. However, I had heard certain rumors about her and the luxury condos. Even Maurice. She's a real piece of work, targeting you like that. But I reckon you only gotta put up with it a bit longer. Might as well wait and see how it plays out. After hearing the whole story from me, said, "Still, trouble has a way of striking without mercy." I had another errand that took me to the major bank branch. As my bad luck would have it, Clarice was at the teller window. I instinctively wanted to leave, but it couldn't be helped. With an unpleasant smirk, "Please have a seat and wait. We'll call you when your number is up." Clarice handed me a number ticket and said, the bank was extremely crowded, so I thought it would take quite a while. And sure enough, I was right. Incredibly, I ended up waiting a total of 5 hours. I tried to kill time by working on my tablet and, with permission, going out to do some shopping partway through. But it was simply far too long. "Thank you for waiting for so long." She called for me with a smile, and I realized she had deliberately made me wait until the very end. However, pursuing the matter would be pointless since she clearly wouldn't apologize. And it would be a hassle to make a big scene at the teller window. Swallowing my frustration, I said, "I'd like to withdraw $15 million. It's quite a large sum, but I notified the bank I would be withdrawing it today. Please process the transaction." Even I realized the amount I stated was rather unrealistic, but Clarice gave me a condescending look. "A broke little company like yours is gonna try that? You've only got $300 in your account. What a load of hot air. Huh? $300 in my account? That can't be right. What on earth is she talking about?" "Excuse me, but I think you must be mistaken again. I'm quite certain I'm scheduled to withdraw $15 million today. Please double-check your records carefully." I implored her, but Clarice wouldn't listen. "I'm not falling for some broke person's excuses. Go on, shoo. Get out of here. Wait a minute. Can I please speak to a different teller?" Realizing she was a lost cause, I tried to seek help from someone else. But we only have trainees working today, and the branch manager is out. For someone spouting nonsense about $15 million, I'm the only one who can deal with you," she insisted. Indeed, the other bank employees were all young and giving me troubled looks. "Don't you dare get involved," she told them forcefully. "This person is just trying to pin her own mistake on me. She's actually the CEO of some broke company with only $300 in its account." With their colleague Clarice asserting this so strongly, truly no one else stepped in to help. As I wondered what to do, she said, "Go on, don't just stand there in silence. Leave. I don't want to look at some poor, compulsive liar." She actually tried to force me out. The people around me were giving me cold stares too. I realized I wouldn't get any support if I stayed there any longer. I decided to leave for the time being, but I couldn't take it anymore. I could feel the intense anger heating up my entire body. And so, I vowed to give her the full wrath of hell. The next day, as I returned to my office from the conference room during my lunch break, I casually glanced at my smartphone. I had accidentally left it behind and wanted to check if I had gotten any calls. To my surprise, there were over 30 missed calls, all coming in after 11 a.m. It was the bank trying to reach me. Figuring it must be about yesterday's incident, I immediately called them back. Then,
I am so sorry about yesterday.
I heard the voice of Clarice, now completely flustered and apologetic.
I want to properly apologize to you in person, so please come to the bank.
Understood. I'll head over right away. Luckily, I didn't have any afternoon appointments. I scarfed down my lunch and made a beeline for the bank. There I found a pale-faced Clarice and the branch manager.
We are terribly sorry for yesterday. Please, right this way to the conference room.
The branch manager showed me in, and we entered the conference room. As soon as I sat down, Clarice launched into a frantic apology.
I am extremely sorry. To think I made the same misunderstanding again. I knew it. So who did you confuse me with this time?
Hearing the details, it turns out the other Blythe she had mistaken me for before was involved again. Apparently that Blythe is the CEO of a company in such dire financial straits that it's on the verge of bankruptcy.
That Mr. Blythe seemed so poor, with only about $300 in his account. I mixed him up with you. Are you truly remorseful? That's incredibly rude to the other Mr. Blythe too.
When I said that coldly, Clarice and the branch manager apologized again.
Letty Blythe is the president of a stuffed animal manufacturing company. I explained before that her business is doing well.
The branch manager scolded her harshly. That's right. I currently run a stuffed toy maker. After graduating high school, I worked at a company that produced small trinkets and plushies to sell at gift shops. Eventually, wanting to make original products that would bring people joy, I established my own company. I chose to focus on stuffed animals because I've had an attachment to them since I was little. I hope that, like they did for me, stuffed toys can provide comfort to children who need it. By the way, the reason I needed to withdraw $15 million was due to various factors like transferring some funds to accounts at other banks and renovating our manufacturing plant. Even during the meeting that led to Clarice developing a grudge against me, I had discussed this matter. Since such a large sum of money was involved, I wanted to clearly explain the reasons for the withdrawal.
Still, that was a terrible misunderstanding. How could you get it so wrong? Well, since you live in that dirty, old apartment building, I just assumed your business must not be doing well.
Instead of simply apologizing, she said unnecessary things.
My company isn't that large, and I try not to be too extravagant for the sake of the future. It's not good to look down on people based on where they live.
When I said that in an irritated tone, the branch manager apologized again.
I am truly sorry for Clarice's behavior. She will be fired, so.
Yes.
I hope you can forgive me in light of that.
Clarice also apologized repeatedly with a desperate look on her face.
Is it because of the mistakes this time and last time? Or was it discovered that you were harassing me near my home? Harassing? Why would she say such an unnecessary thing?
It seemed they hadn't heard about that part, so I told them everything as payback. The branch manager.
I don't even know how to apologize. Stop bothering Ms. Blythe immediately.
Lectured her.
Yes. I won't interact with her anymore, so please forgive me.
Seeing Clarice drenched in nervous sweat and looking completely haggard, I felt a bit of catharsis. Incidentally, the reasons for her firing were habitual negligence of duties and bullying of colleagues. I later heard her warnings to the juniors not to get involved were simply because she wanted to be intimidating and throw her weight around. My incident was apparently the decisive factor in her termination. The bank is probably better off without someone like her. And so, she was officially fired sometime after that. 1 week later, at night. I got home late from work, arriving by taxi around midnight. Just then, I saw a woman with a suitcase and backpack emerge from the luxury condo across the street. Even from a distance, I could tell it was Clarice. But despite the late hour, she was wearing sunglasses. Because of that, she didn't seem to see in front of her very well. As she descended the stairs near the entrance, she took a hard tumble. The sight of her rolling down with her suitcase was quite comical. I couldn't help but laugh. The night was quiet, so even a small sound carried. Clarice seemed to notice me. She took off her sunglasses and marched over.
Hey, what are you laughing at?
Sorry, it was just funny seeing you fall like that. When I answered her honestly, Clarice's face turned red.
Don't laugh at other people's misfortunes. Instead of hanging out so late at night, hurry up and go home.
I can't help it, I was working.
More importantly, Clarice, what are you doing with sunglasses and so much luggage this late? Where are you going?
When I sharply questioned her.
Oh, I'm just going on a little trip.
She made a strained excuse.
You're clearly flustered. There's no public transportation running in the middle of the night like this. Rather than a trip, this has more of a midnight run vibe. It's not a midnight run. I'm just moving out.
She hastily denied it, but it must have been close to 3 a.m. No one moves out at this hour.
You must have some incriminating circumstances and don't want to be seen leaving. How can you read my mind like that?
She was shocked, but I think anyone could figure out that much.
Don't tell me, you got in a fight with your husband and he kicked you out? How do you know? This is getting creepy.
Hit with the truth, Clarice plopped down right there. But this isn't such a big deal either.
You'd argue with your husband sometimes, right? I saw you yelling near the entrance many times.
Indeed, living across the way, I inevitably catch glimpses of the luxury condo residents from time to time. Clarice would occasionally go out with her husband.
You are the one earning money, so it's no big deal. It's because you keep spending that we can't save no matter how high my income is.
And they'd have shouting matches like,
you talk so loudly. I can hear it even from inside my apartment sometimes. I've never spoken to your husband, but I know his name is Terrence.
As I calmly explained, she hung her head in embarrassment.
Oh no. I can't believe you overheard such ugly scenes. That's why I figured you'd end up divorcing and moving out eventually. Plus, a lot of people move out of there within 2 to 3 years. They do! Could it be a haunted spot? That must be it. I keep getting hit with misfortune because of evil spirits.
She's letting her imagination run wild, but that's not it.
The rent there is really high, right? A lot of people can't maintain that standard of living and move out.
As you'd expect, this luxury condo is for the wealthy. Temporarily successful investors and CEOs live there, but it seems difficult for them to keep paying over $1,000 a month in rent. Many move out within 2 to 3 years.
Is that so? Well, I do have the financial means. If I hadn't gotten divorced, I could have kept living there normally.
Clarice still puts on airs, but I can't help looking at her skeptically.
Really?
You were in quite a financial bind, weren't you?
On what basis are you saying that? It's not good to make wild speculations.
She argues back desperately, beads of sweat on her forehead.
I have my reasons. First of all, you're always wearing brand name items, so I assume you spend quite lavishly. It's far more than a bank teller's salary could afford, right? How do you know the prices of brand name goods?
She looks at me with the shock of discovering a new species. How rude.
I'll have you know, I do business with my fair share of wealthy people. These days, you can easily look up the prices of brand name items online.
That's true. As Clarice looks uncomfortable, I continue.
If you're spending that extravagantly, it's clear you don't have much money. I don't know what your husband does, but he must have a high salary. You took advantage of that to splurge as you pleased, so you got kicked out.
That's what I think.
Whoa! You see right through me.
She looks completely spooked, but she basically revealed all this herself. After all, I've seen Clarice and Terrence have flashy arguments in front of the entrance before.
What do you mean? Get out! I'm at my limit with a wife who spends so much money without thinking of the future. Who do you think is earning that cash?
They had that sort of exchange, and I've overheard similar conversations from time to time. So it was easy to imagine she got kicked out over money. After I explained all this, she looked utterly devastated.
I thought people didn't get to know their neighbors these days, but you noticed so much. I do live right across from you. Sometimes I can't help but notice things.
When I put it bluntly, Clarice covered her face with her hands and froze.
How mortifying. To think I was such an open book. I heard it even when I didn't want to. Of course I'd find out if you're yelling that loudly.
I retorted mercilessly, causing her to look even more ashamed. She tried to hide behind her suitcase.
I wanted to sneak away because I didn't want anyone to know I got kicked out for being a spendthrift. Having everything brought to light is the worst. Too bad the person you least wanted to find out did.
When I stated it plainly, Clarice shrank back further, looking even more uncomfortable.
You've got that right. You really never know what life will bring. Well, you don't need to get all philosophical about your whole life. More importantly, if you're moving, shouldn't you get going? Passers-by have been glancing over here.
And indeed, behind us, a man was looking our way with concern. In the middle of the night, two women were facing each other. One was trying to hide behind a suitcase. Of course that would make someone uneasy. It's all right. I called out to him, and he left. But he still had a suspicious look on his face. She watched the scene unfold with a despairing expression.
Why are there people out so late at night?
This area has turned into a proper residential neighborhood. Sometimes there are folks who work late and come home in the middle of the night. As I explained what should have been obvious, she exclaimed,
I can't stay here any longer.
And with that, she dashed off, disappearing into the darkness. She's a noisy one, but I'd be glad if she's finally gone for good. With that thought, I returned to my apartment. However, a month later, I spotted a figure pacing back and forth many times in front of the luxury condo. As soon as that figure saw me, they approached.
Clarice, is that you?
Indeed, it was none other than Clarice, who I thought had left for good. I had gone for a walk to enjoy the nice weather and was returning in high spirits, but now that was ruined.
Actually, I did move out of this luxury condo, but I couldn't find a new job. So I thought I'd somehow get my husband to take care of me again and came here. In the end, you're still relying on your husband, huh? Well, good luck persuading him then.
I let out an exasperated sigh and tried to leave, but Clarice stood in front of me.
The truth is, my attempt at persuasion already failed. I was walking around wondering what to do when I ran into you. I see. There's nothing I can do for you, so please move aside. Not wanting to get dragged into her mess, I tried to dash past her to my apartment entrance. But she persistently blocked my path.
Wait! I need a little help.
Hearing those words, I couldn't believe my ears.
Did you forget what happened between us? Take a good look at your own actions. I know it's an unreasonable request. I'm not asking because I think there's a high chance. I'm betting on a slim possibility here. Why do you think there's even a possibility? I have zero intention of helping you,
I said coldly, trying to hurry into my unit. How cruel. But then she started to cry. It's humiliating for me too, you know. And yet, to say you don't want to help, you must have lost all sense of human compassion.
Are you saying it's my fault? Do whatever you want.
She talks as if acknowledging her own wrongs, but then says I've lost all sense of human compassion. It's clear she hasn't reflected at all. Dealing with someone like this is just a waste of time. Fed up, I pushed her aside and climbed the stairs.
Wait! You're really abandoning me!
She let out a loud cry and chased after me. But at that moment,
shut up! How many times do I have to tell you?
Maurice came bursting out of his apartment. As if on cue, 2 other residents also emerged.
I was taking a nap, and now I'm wide awake. You're that person who made a ruckus sometimes, right? Letty said you moved out, so why are you back?
Bombarded with remarks like these, Clarice froze in shock.
You don't have to say all that out of nowhere. No, that's not it. We've been bothered by your yelling for ages. We have a right to complain.
Maurice angrily gave her a scary look, causing Clarice to cower.
I suppose so. Still, you neighbors sure are close. This apartment building is pretty old. Some people have lived here for over a decade. The residents have known each other a long time. It's a rare apartment complex these days with such a tight-knit community. As I explained in a cold, matter-of-fact tone, Maurice and the 2 other residents closed in on Clarice. Get out!
They said in a voice that seemed to rumble from the depths of the earth. Even Clarice realized this was bad news. I'm so sorry. Her body trembling, she fled. Don't you ever come back. I yelled after her, retreating back. Perhaps thanks to the power of this neighborhood watch, Clarice stopped showing her face around the apartment. I didn't know what happened to Clarice after that, but I found out by chance when I went on a business trip. I entered a restaurant to have lunch, and there she was, working as an employee. Seeing me must have really thrown her off.
Why are you here?
Because she screamed. Of course, the male manager scolded her. But she seemed to have completely lost her composure. She dropped a glass of water, knocked over a salad. Mistakes left and right.
I'm terribly sorry.
She apologized over and over.
You're completely incompetent. You're fired.
But the manager berated her. The light may never shine on Clarice's life again. I couldn't shake the feeling. As for me, I'm still running my company to this day, steadily growing the business. A stuffed animal we recently released is selling well. I'm grateful we've entered mass production. I'm getting messages of thanks from children across the country, which makes me glad I chose this line of work. My relationships with the apartment residents are still good too. We often remark how nice it is that things have become peaceful. I'm so happy to be able to spend ordinary days without incident. Clarice was a real nuisance, but she taught me just how precious a mundane everyday life is.
In any case, I'm fortunate to have found the best possible home. I want to live with a sense of gratitude for that. With such thoughts in mind, I'm working hard again today. I'm right in the middle of visiting my daughter's boyfriend, Evan's house. Let's eat together, as a new family. Risa, Evan's mom, taunts me by devouring pizza with relish. Yet, for some reason, I'm the only one with familiar instant noodles in front of me. My daughter, Wendy, sits opposite me, silent and head bowed. Risa leans in to look at her face. "Oh, Wendy, what's wrong?" "Don't worry, let's eat. From now on, we'll be your family instead of Rothy." Wendy looks at Risa coldly, ignores her words, walks briskly to my side, and says to me in a clear voice, "Let's go home." To which I nod. Sure. As we head to the entrance, an agitated Evan blocks our way.
Wendy, what are you doing? Thinking of going home. To avoid wasting any more time. Huh? Do you even realize what you're saying?
Evan raises his voice in irritation, grabs her arm. Then she shakes off his hand and shouts loudly,
"You're the one who even understand what you're doing to whom?"
And so, Wendy and I confront Evan and his family with a certain truth. I am Rothy, 50 years old. I've raised Wendy alone since my husband died of an illness 18 years ago. At the time of his death, Wendy was just 7 years old. Not wanting to limit her future just because I was a single mother, I wished for financial stability, at least. Also, to fulfill my husband's dream. If only things could get on track. With that determination, I worked desperately, relying on grandparents and after-school programs. During that time, I made Wendy feel lonely many times. Why doesn't Mom wait at home for me? Everyone else's mom says welcome back at home. One summer day, when Wendy was in the 2nd grade, she said to me with her lower lip bitten and tears in her eyes. It felt like a blow to the head. Too absorbed in work every day, I was losing sight of what was important. The most important thing was Wendy, yet I made her face look like this. "Sorry. I'm so sorry, Wendy." Since then, I gradually started to cut back on work where I could. Still, compared to families with both parents, I think we had less relaxed time together. Even when I got home early, there were times I had to work at home. Sorry, Wendy. After finishing overtime and rushing home to manage dinner and baths, I'd hurry Wendy to bed and finally catch a breath, only to see her sleeping peacefully. Looking at her, I was tormented by an indescribable sense of guilt. She was still in elementary school, and I couldn't let her be as spoiled as she deserved. But I had to work, without it, we couldn't live. If I fell ill, our household would be over. Every day was a struggle. But thanks to those efforts, by the time she graduated from middle school, my job stabilized, and we began to see financial ease. As a high schooler, Wendy had become quite independent.
"Mom, aren't you working too much?"
she would say, worried about my health. I felt a sense of reliability in her, who seemed older than her age, but also a bit of loneliness. From there, Wendy continued to grow without needing my worry, making her own way. Now, Wendy is turning 25 this year. She has fit in well at her job and adapted to living alone. Parents often think separation comes later than it does. At this rate, Wendy getting married might just happen in the blink of an eye. I sometimes imagine her in a wedding dress, and it brings tears to my eyes. Yet, I haven't heard any boyfriend stories from her. I thought marriage talks might still be a while away. Then, out of the blue, she suddenly contacted me. Initially, it was just casual chat, but suddenly, she went quiet and then shyly began. "Actually, there's someone I'm thinking of marrying." The news was so surprising, I almost screamed. Wendy's sudden marriage talk was honestly delightful.
Tell me, what's he like?
Truth be told, I wanted to grill her for details. But, suppressing my curiosity, I asked. Wendy seemed to ponder for a while, then after a pause, she answered.
He's a colleague from work, competent, I guess. He confessed to me, and we've been dating for a bit. That's wonderful.
As her parent, it might sound strange, but I believe Wendy has grown up to be a considerate, intelligent, and kind person. The good reputation I occasionally hear about Wendy at her workplace is all positive.
Wendy is often requested by clients because she's polite, serious, and reliable.
I was proud to know that she was sincerely committed to her work.
There's a lot I can learn from her in terms of work. Is that so?
Wendy's voice was lively as she talked about him. I wondered what kind of person Wendy's choice was. I wanted to know more. After all, this was the first boyfriend Wendy had ever told me about. I was very curious about him, but I didn't want to put any strange pressure on her, so I refrained from asking. Eventually, if anything progressed, Wendy would tell me. That's what I thought as I watched over her. Then, a few weeks after the initial contact, she reached out to me again.
Sorry for the suddenness, but, I'd like you to meet him sometime.
The invitation came much sooner than I had expected. I was a bit surprised, but also pleased.
Oh, that's wonderful. Just let me know when. I'll make room in my schedule. I'm looking forward to it.
But, despite my excitement over the phone, Wendy's reaction seemed complicated for some reason. When I asked what was wrong, she awkwardly answered. Just don't get your hopes up too much. I mean, I hope you won't be disappointed, Mom. It was an unexpected response.
What? Oh, come on. I'm not that overprotective, and I don't have high expectations. Most importantly, I trust your choice.
Yeah, thanks. The frustrating thing about phone calls is not being able to see the other person's face. I couldn't tell what kind of expression Wendy had right now. Why would my always positive daughter make such a negative preface about introducing her boyfriend to me? It's not like Wendy. Though it crossed my mind, she might just be nervous. I convinced myself of this and eagerly awaited the day I would meet Wendy and her boyfriend. And the day of the family meeting with him arrived.
I'm nervous. Does my outfit look okay? Don't worry, it suits you well. Besides, I'm the one who's more nervous.
We headed to a well-known restaurant in the area, smiling and looking at each other. It's a place often used for business discussions. Initially, we had planned to meet on a weekend for a leisurely chat. However, he was busy on weekends, so we ended up meeting after work. A little after we arrived, Wendy's boyfriend showed up.
Nice to meet you, I'm Evan.
Nice to meet you, I'm Wendy's mom. I'm glad to meet you. As I bowed, Evan smiled and greeted me back. With his tall figure and a suit that fit perfectly, he was a modern-looking man. His friendly demeanor was exactly that of a likable young salesman. Despite what Wendy had said earlier, I was taken aback by how pleasant he seemed. Such a nice person. What was she worried about?
We've only been dating for a short time, but I'm considering marrying Wendy in the future. I'm really glad to meet you, Rothy, today.
I'm glad you reached out to us too. It's reassuring to hear that he's not just playing around, but considering marriage. Serious, reliable, and interesting to talk to. Despite being such a nice guy, what was she worried about? He seemed like a very nice young man. With that thought, I was enjoying our conversation. However, as the alcohol flowed and the conversation got livelier, things started to turn odd. Evan's face turned red, and he was clearly in high spirits.
You know, when I first heard she was a single mother, I honestly felt a bit reluctant. But I'm glad you're a good person. Eh? Oh, right.
I almost dropped my glass. Even though alcohol was involved, it's not something you'd expect to be said at a first meeting. I think my face must have stiffened at that moment.
Hey, Evan.
Wendy quickly placed her hand on his shoulder. But he shrugged off her hand with a shake.
Come on, I'm giving a compliment here. Wendy, you're always so particular about these things.
It wasn't she being particular. I thought to myself. She sighed and held her head in her hands. Evan often makes careless remarks. I'm sorry, Mom. Oh, it's okay. Saying I wasn't bothered would be a lie. I've faced prejudice against single mothers many times before, but it never gets easier. It always pierces deeply into my heart. In the slightly tense atmosphere, only Evan seemed to enjoy his drink. It was the moment I first felt a sense of discomfort towards him. At first, I thought he was an impeccable young man. But as the alcohol settled, his mouth began to reveal various things. There were moments when I almost wanted to tilt my head in confusion.
Wendy, she's too good at her job. She's well regarded at work, but as a boyfriend, it feels like I'm being overshadowed.
As he said, leaning on the table. It seemed he didn't notice my confusion at all. Perhaps he didn't care. But she is working hard too. I followed up with a bit of irritation, but Evan waved his hand dismissively. You don't get it. Wendy's working too hard.
And, women should have a bit of vulnerability, right? It makes them cuter. Wasn't it like that back in your days, a long time ago?
A long time ago. It felt like being treated as an old person. Not incorrect, but not a pleasant feeling. Wendy tried to glare at him to stop, but Evan, finishing his glass of alcohol, seemed utterly satisfied. I wonder. But times have changed. It's different from our days, as you say.
Well, your time was decades ago. But I still think women shouldn't stand out more than men.
By the end, I could only respond with a wry smile, completely dumbfounded. After returning home, Wendy called to apologize. I'm really sorry, Mom. It's okay. I was happy to meet him. This was the truth. I was honestly happy to meet her partner. But I couldn't wholeheartedly support them. Thinking of that person spending his life with Wendy, I couldn't feel blessed. Sensing my heart, Wendy added an excuse for him. Evan has been having a tough time at work lately. He's usually much calmer.
I see, he's tired. It can't be helped.
I'm sorry. If alcohol reveals one's true nature, what should I do? They said they were considering marriage. But is he really the right partner for her? Anxiety spread through my heart, but I couldn't say this to Wendy herself. It lacked delicacy, but there wasn't enough to criticize. I guess all we can do is watch a little longer. I murmured to myself, sighing. I thought to observe for a while longer. But a few weeks after that family meeting, Wendy brought surprising news.
Actually, Evan proposed to me yesterday. He wants you to come with me to his family's place next time. Are you saying you're going to marry him?
I almost blurted out my concern for Evan, but chose my words carefully.
You're saying you want to marry him?
If Wendy herself wishes it, it can't be helped. But as a parent, could I send off my daughter with these doubts? Asking hesitantly, after a few seconds, Wendy said in a small voice. Actually, Mom, there's been something on my mind recently that I couldn't tell you.
What?
Hearing a certain fact from her, I decided to act immediately. For my precious daughter. There's no time for hesitation. And a few days later, we visited Evan's family home. I'm glad you could come. Evan came to pick us up on foot from the nearest station to his family's home. Wendy, Evan, and I walked to his home. Our parents are so eager about the marriage, waiting for it to happen soon. My mom, even before meeting Wendy, thought of her like a real daughter. Wendy mentioned that marriage was still on hold, but Evan and his parents seemed all in.
I'm looking forward to meeting them.
Imagining the upcoming events, I smiled vacantly. After about a 10-minute walk, we arrived at his family home. As he said, his parents greeted us with smiles.
Oh, she's quite small and thin, but such a cute young lady.
You must be Wendy.
Nice to meet you.
Wendy responded calmly with a smile, but I was shocked. To comment on Wendy's appearance in front of me, her parent, at the first meeting. Silently staring, Evan's mother, Risa, seemed to notice me and smiled in my direction.
So, you're Wendy's mother, right?
Yes. As Wendy and I awkwardly interacted, Evan's father, Mike, interjected.
Well, if you eat lots of delicious food here, you'll get a more robust physique. Anyway, come on Wendy, let's go inside.
Hurry. Ah, yes. Excuse us. Mike works at the same company as Wendy and Evan, but in a different department, so it seems today is the first time they've met face to face. To comment on someone's appearance at the first meeting, especially as a couple, what kind of people are they? I was taken aback, and Evan said to me, "What's wrong?
Come on, Rothy, don't be shy. Our house is quite nice for this area, but you don't have to hold back."
Did he think I was overwhelmed? No, I was just surprised by his odd parents. I never imagined being commented on my daughter's appearance at a first meeting.
Right, let's go in.
Holding back my bubbling feelings, I stepped into the room. True to their boasting, the house was spacious and beautiful.
This is quite different from your childhood home, so it might take some time to get comfortable, but you'll be fine. You'll get used to it.
Risa glanced at me and then hugged her shoulder. Are they implying we live in a shabby house because we're a mother-daughter household?
Maintaining such a large house is tough, but Wendy, you'll manage, right? You've always done household chores, haven't you? That's normal for a single mother family, right?
Poor thing. I wanted to retort, but I held back. Wendy started to say something, but before she could, Risa pushed her back towards the living room, speeding up their pace.
You must be hungry, right? Sit down.
The living room table was laden with pizzas.
We ordered from a famous local shop because Wendy was coming. It's a special day, after all.
Indeed, the pizzas looked expensive. Guided to our seats, Wendy and I noticed something amiss.
What's this?
Pointing at what was placed before me, Evan's family all laughed the same way.
In the world, there are all sorts of people, you know? You've heard it, right? Living in different worlds. Today, we thought Wendy and you should experience that.
Risa exclaimed joyfully. Next to her, Mike and Evan, sitting by Wendy, watched the scene with amusement. Their intentions were too clear, and I couldn't help but laugh.
I see. So, famous pizzas in front of everyone, and instant noodles in front of me.
At my words, Evan clapped. Exactly.
You're quick to catch on. Instant noodles represent Wendy and Rothy's past, and the famous pizzas represent our family and Wendy's future with us.
It's simple, right? Wendy sat silently, head bowed. I remained silent too, glaring at Evan's family. Thinking they had won, Risa said brashly.
Let's eat together as a new family.
Evan's family began eating the delicious-looking pizza as if to show off to me. Noticing my stiffness, they raised their voices in an exaggerated tone.
Your portion just had water added, so it'll be ready in about 3 minutes. You're used to it, right?
Sorry, but we'll start without you. Come on, Wendy, eat up. With that, Risa peered into Wendy's face. At that moment, Wendy slowly stood up. Risa looked at her curiously. Oh, Wendy, what's wrong? Don't worry, eat up. From now on, instead of her, we'll be your family. Wendy looked at Risa coldly, ignoring her words, and briskly walked to my side, saying to me in a clear voice, "Let's go home." I nodded in agreement. Sure. As we headed for the entrance, an agitated Evan blocked our path.
Wendy, what are you doing?
Thinking of going home. To avoid wasting any more time.
What? Do you even realize what you're saying?
Evan, visibly irritated, raised his voice and grabbed her arm. She shook off his hand and shouted loudly,
You're the one who don't understand what you're doing.
Evan looked momentarily surprised, then scoffed.
Are you going to complain again about being disrespected? Can't help it, can you? This is like a ritual for your sake.
What? When Wendy glared at him, Evan shrugged his shoulders resignedly.
You always brag about your mom, but after all, she's just a poor single mother, right? Moreover, a widow who hasn't been able to remarry even after decades. We're inviting you from that pitiful world to our wealthy one, and you're still unsatisfied?
A widow who hasn't been able to remarry. Some people might see it that way. Indeed, being a single mother, I've often been shunned and looked down upon. But actually, there have been people who have shown interest in me. However, since my husband passed away, Wendy has always been my top priority. There are many benefits to remarriage, but also not a few disadvantages. After much thought, I had decided not to remarry until she did. And Wendy herself knew that. Wendy, still staring at Evan, let out a big sigh.
I thought you were capable at work, but it turns out you're this useless in private. What did you just say?
Evan, his face turning red with anger, was met with a questioning look from Wendy.
You separate work and private life? But you should think carefully from now on. It's hard to tell where work and private life connect. Are you threatening me? What connection could possibly exist between an old woman like her and my job?
Wendy looked at me and nodded. It seemed there was no need for silence anymore. I turned to Evan, cleared my throat once, and smiled.
Actually, even though we've just met, your company and our company have a deep connection. My company?
Evan's face, which had been red until a moment ago, suddenly turned pale.
What do you mean? The company?
Wendy is cautious, so she hadn't told you.
Actually, your company is a subsidiary of ours.
Our company, I say, but in reality, it was something my late husband founded. Interested in the apparel industry, he had slowly planned and started the business since his student days. The company was doing fairly well, but when my husband passed away mid-dream, I took over. I don't have my husband's sense for business. At first, it was a real struggle. But I desperately wanted to continue what he left behind. I thought if the company stabilized, we could be financially secure. It was tough managing work while raising young Wendy, but with help from those around us, we eventually got on track. Recently, the business has been booming.
Don't lie! Wendy never said anything about that.
Evan looked at her in a panic, but she didn't meet his eyes and countered.
I don't like being treated specially because of it. Only the CEO, Christopher, knows about this in our company. What? The CEO knows about you?
Wendy nodded, then gave me a signal.
By the way, Christopher has been a fan of Mom for a long time. I was the reason he never made a move. Hey! Don't say unnecessary things.
Actually, Christopher had confessed to me several times after my husband passed away.
I can't consider it until Wendy is grown up.
I had declined, thinking it would make personal life awkward, but we've maintained a good relationship as friends since he acts normally around me. Evan's mouth flapped open and shut, his eyes darting around.
Your mom, the parent company's CEO. And CEO is a fan of you, Rothy?
Yes.
Now that you and Wendy won't be getting married, can you stop calling me Rothy?
Evan was completely confused. But there was more to be addressed. I almost left due to their treatment, but I had something else to ask him. I had come today specifically for this reason.
Evan, you seem to have a good reputation at work, but apparently, you've been doing whatever you want with it. Ah.
Evan froze, his face turning pale. Clearly, he knew what I was talking about. His eyes flickered uncertainly.
I heard you've been approaching various dispatch workers. Surely, many would be happy to accept your advances. How do you know that?
Evan's eyes widened. He glanced at his parents for a moment, but then shook his head at me.
It's a misunderstanding. I did approach them. But that was to improve the atmosphere at work.
His flustered demeanor was suspicious. How could he lie so blatantly? If he was inviting people like this, it's no wonder anyone would be suspicious of this man. But I was almost deceived by him at our first meeting. If dispatch workers fell for his masked state, it's understandable. He's still frantically making excuses.
You made excuses to Wendy in the same way, didn't you?
Wendy, being honest and serious, trusted him. However, feeling anxious again about the marriage, she consulted me at that time.
After hearing everything from Wendy, I became very anxious. So, I hired a detective to investigate you after your proposal. That's an invasion of privacy.
Evan was frantic. This reaction alone should have been telling, but the results were as expected. He had physical relationships with several girls.
Some were even hinted at contract extensions by you, despite you having no authority to promise that. It's sad they were all deceived.
Evan, looking down and trembling, suddenly raised his head and yelled.
So what? That just motivates them more at work. I'm not doing anything wrong. In fact, I'm helping the company.
To think he would deny and justify himself, I was appalled. How many dispatch workers has this man manipulated?
Dispatch workers are, in a way, employees entrusted to the company by their agencies. You seem to look down on them, but they are not people who deserve such treatment. What? That's just a pretty speech. Dispatch workers are just a bunch of people who couldn't become full-time employees, right? In other words, a collection of lower-quality people. We, the full-time employees, are obviously superior.
This person is beyond redemption. Even Evan's parents, who were nodding in agreement behind him, were incomprehensible to me. Perhaps he received such education from a young age. Living in different worlds and looking down on others to bask in their sense of superiority. It would be a waste of time to say anything to such people.
It seems it will take time for you to understand. But maybe you'll grasp it quickly if you find yourself in their position? What? Well, according to your standards, you'll be below dispatch workers, right? As you said, the lowest tier?
Evan looked at me with desperate eyes, shaking his head.
What do you mean? Do you think the company will continue to employ someone who has been so involved with dispatch workers? You're fired. CEO is also furious. That can't be. Wait. That's a lie, right? Impossible.
Evan tried to grab my arm, but Wendy pushed his hand away.
Don't touch my mom with your filthy hands. We live in different worlds. It's good. We're not in the same lowest world as you. No, wait, Wendy.
Evan, tearful and begging, received no glance from her.
I thought you were a wonderful person at first. I was deceived by that, but now I feel nothing. Let's go, Mom.
As Wendy pulled my hand, Evan's parents stepped in to stop us.
Wait, Wendy. He will change from now on. That's right. He might have done something stupid, but he's a promising guy for the future. It's a waste to give up on him now! You'll regret it later!
The parents were in a panic. No wonder. Evan and his father were the main income earners for the family. With Evan being fired, the income for Evan's family would drastically decrease. The days of boasting about famous pizzas would be over. Mike, in particular, had another worry. I stood in front of the parents and told Mike,
"Did you think it wouldn't come out? What are you talking about? Evan's not the only one doing foolish things, right? A foolish family, indeed."
Mike was sweating on his forehead.
"Please, don't let the CEO know about me. It's all already known. Good luck job hunting as a family." But, in this industry, rumors spread quickly, so re-employment might be difficult.
Is there a gene for bowing? Evan and his father knelt down together, resembling each other even in their posture. As I left the room and looked back, their figures were strikingly similar from a distance. Later, Evan and his father were both fired together. Not just because of the issue with dispatch workers, but various small deceits had also come to light. Despite being well paid, both became unemployed at once, plunging their standard of living to rock bottom. They had to sell their house and now live in an old apartment, the three of them together. It'll be a long while before they can afford pizza again. Incidentally, both members of the Evan family were regarded as capable workers on the surface, so their dismissal caused quite a stir within the company. For me, the future of Evan and his family holds no interest. My primary concern was whether Wendy was taking the shock too hard. That was the only thing on my mind. However, it seems that worry was unnecessary.
I need to gain more experience. It was my lack of experience that got me deceived by someone like that.
Saying so, she has been actively going out for meals with colleagues and friends introduced by others, seemingly to meet new people. For my daughter, her positive and reliable outlook is admirable. This is the Wendy I know. As for me, following this incident,
"It's time for you to let go,"
she told me.
"It might sound odd coming from me, especially after what just happened, but if there's someone you want to marry, I truly want you to do so. I'm already 25, so there's no need for any hesitation or worry on my part."
Somehow, Wendy seems to have taken to heart Evan's derogatory comments about me being a widow who couldn't remarry. While I don't necessarily have a desire to marry, the thought of spending the rest of my life with someone does appeal to me. Pushed by her support, the next time he invites me out for a meal, maybe I won't make up an excuse and will accept instead. After decades of knowing him, perhaps with him, I could spend a happy and peaceful life in my later years. That's what I've come to think.
"Next month, you'll get to meet your 10th grandchild."
Suddenly, I noticed her belly was swollen, and Mary was happily rubbing it. The room was small, and with 4 children and 9 grandchildren around, I hadn't noticed. She was already in her final month.
"Wow."
Surprise, joy, and then an overwhelming anxiety all hit me at once.
"Well, I hadn't seen you in about a year, so I never got the chance to tell you. It's a boy."
Live long, Grandma. Yes, indeed. Everyone present rejoiced and celebrated this happy news. Amid the exchanged words of happiness, I couldn't fully suppress the complex feelings inside me. The truth was, my eldest son Tom had been continuously taking money from me, depleting my savings. Life had been a struggle day by day. I wish I could give Mary a present, but I no longer had the means. Never did I expect to feel so miserable at such a joyous gathering. I felt utterly pathetic and was on the verge of tears. I quietly left the room and went upstairs. Tom's door, slightly ajar, caught my eye. What state was his room in now? As I slowly opened the door, the devastated room was revealed. Stunned, tears I had been holding back rolled down my cheeks. Then, I heard someone coming up loudly from downstairs. At that moment, various thoughts raced through my mind, and one possible outcome crossed my mind. That just couldn't happen. In a split second, I jumped off the balcony. My name is Kate. A widow in my 60s, I lost my husband a few years ago. For about 3 years after his death, I was in a slump. But realizing I couldn't go on like that and encouraged by a close neighbor, I decided to take a part-time job. Now, I work part-time at a supermarket, which gives me something to look forward to every day. I enjoy the small talks with customers lining up at the cash register.
Fish is cheap today, isn't it?
I would initiate conversations. This made even the busiest of housewives feel relaxed, and I was happy about it. A man in work clothes came to buy a big hamburger for lunch. He seemed to be in his mid to late 30s. His suntanned face looked robust, reminding me of my son Tom. I have 2 sons and 2 daughters, 4 children in total. Raising them was a struggle, but I managed to get all 4 through to college. My second son, eldest daughter, and youngest daughter each found wonderful partners and got married. Now, they're blessed with children and are very busy every day. Only my eldest, Tom, has no desire to marry and lives with me. He is very caring, perhaps because he is the eldest. He takes the initiative to help with things I don't understand, like internet and smartphone settings. Also, he liked to spend his money on hobbies. His salary and bonuses often went to his fishing hobby.
I bought a new reel again.
He was happily unpacking a parcel that had arrived today, admiring his new gear.
It's fine to spend on your hobby, but are you saving properly? I am. I've also started some investment savings.
He had been managing his finances well, unknown to me, and contributing to the household. I was relieved to know he was managing his money properly.
Are you going sea fishing again this weekend?
Yeah, I'll be going. Just like the man in work clothes, Tom's face and arms were sunburned. I could tell he enjoyed spending the day out with his friends, fishing under the sun. It was healthy, and that was what mattered most.
Be careful not to fall into the sea.
I know. Tom inspected his new fishing gear one by one, his eyes sparkling. He looked like a little child beholding a treasure. Beside him, I happened to glance at my planner. The first Sunday of last month was my birthday. On this day, my married children and grandchildren came over, and we all celebrated my birthday together. They insisted on celebrating every year without fail, so it has become a tradition. Especially my youngest daughter, Mary, was enthusiastic about it.
It's only once a year, Mom,
she would say, and also invite her sister and brother. With a total of 9 grandchildren, the house felt a bit cramped with everyone in it. But that was the only day we could all gather. I try to think it's nice once in a while. Despite everything, having a large family is something I'm happy and grateful for. Thanks to them, I always look forward to the next birthday right after one ends.
To still look forward to birthdays at my age.
I murmured to myself and couldn't help but laugh, even though I was alone. Looking back, I think that moment was the peak of my happiness. Amidst days of cherishing happiness, it came unexpectedly. On a day when spring was supposed to be near, yet cold rain fell. When I returned home from my part-time job, Tom was sitting in the living room. In the dark, head in hands. He was muttering something, Tom? What's wrong?
I did nothing wrong. It's him.
Sensing something serious, I quickly turned on the light and made him some hot cocoa. In the bright room, I saw that Tom's hair and clothes were wet from the rain. His usually vibrant, sun-kissed face looked pale and drained. Then, I took my time to listen to him. Shockingly, he had been laid off.
My boss tricked me. And then, it was actually his mistake, but I got blamed.
But can't you apologize and ask for another chance?
It's no use. It was a pretty big deal, and they said it's irreversible.
That's terrible.
I'm done. I can't trust anyone anymore.
I couldn't stop him from crying. Nor could I tell him not to. It was the first time I saw Tom so defeated. How could I make him understand that I knew how he felt, betrayed by a boss he trusted? For now, I suggested he take a warm bath. Then, Tom ate a little dinner and went to bed early. It was a night when Tom, who had been so positive about work and hobbies, changed completely. From the next day, he mostly stayed in his room. It seemed he spent his days in a daze, possibly shocked, not even trying to look for a new job. He stopped going fishing. Fishing gear boxes were carelessly thrown in a corner of the living room. Could it be that he would remain shut-in forever? I never imagined the lively Tom becoming a shut-in. Could it really come to this? However, my fears became reality, and Tom gradually stopped coming out of his room. When I called out to him through his door, I could hear him shouting back.
I can't trust anyone anymore. I don't want to work.
But maybe it'd be good to go outside, even just a little.
Leave me alone.
After that, Tom didn't respond to me anymore. I kept going to my part-time job while Tom was shut in. Being at work was a relief. Talking with colleagues and having casual conversations with customers was soothing. But the moment I clocked out and headed home was the most depressing. Walking home slowly, shoulders drooped. I was desperate for Tom to recover. Seeing the man in work clothes coming to buy a hamburger every lunchtime made me feel inexplicably sad. What should I do? I never imagined my son, an adult, would become a shut-in. I was at a loss, not knowing who to consult. I thought about asking his siblings, but I didn't want to burden them with unnecessary worry. They have their own families. It wouldn't be fair to involve them in Tom's issues. Tom? You're there, right? Trying to do something, I stood in front of Tom's room upstairs. Come down and eat something, at least. No matter how much I called, there was no answer.
Today it's pizza.
Then, a dull sound. Tom had hit the wall. I was startled and stared at the door. Was he saying to leave him alone? I wasn't sure, but something must have upset him. Tom. I'll leave the pizza on the kitchen table. Heat it up and eat it later. I made sure my voice didn't tremble as I said this and went downstairs. I just wished for Tom to return to his old self. A few days later, on my day off, Tom came out of his room. His hair was messy, sticking out everywhere. And his beard had grown, making his face look unkempt. Still in his pajamas, he opened the fridge, grabbed 3 cans of beer, and went back to his room. I worried if he was drinking like that every day. I knocked on Tom's door at lunch and dinner time. You need to eat something nutritious.
Shut up! You don't understand how I feel.
Don't just drink. Why not go fishing like you used to?
Do you really hate me that much?
It's not that. I just want you to be your energetic self again. I was about to say that when Tom came out of his room.
I'll go out then. Happy now?
With that, Tom stormed out of the house. Where was he going in his pajamas? Without even telling me his destination? What am I supposed to do now? All I could do was murmur to myself in the living room. If my husband were still alive, what would he have said in such a situation? Looking at his photo for help yielded no response. It must have been showing on my face at work because one day. The manager asked me. Your expression has been dark lately. Are you okay? I didn't want to be a burden, so I forced a smile and replied, I'm fine, just a bit of family stuff. Yes, just a little. Just a bit, I told myself as I worked through the day. Mary, even after getting married and having children, had always been concerned about me. On holidays, she would sometimes bring my granddaughter and for a visit. But lately, since Tom started shutting himself away, we had decided to meet outside. I didn't want them to see the mess his room had become. Mary didn't seem to mind for the first 2 or 3 times, but by the 4th, she seemed to sense something was off. It was during a break at a restaurant that she asked me, Mom, is something wrong? We've been meeting outside a lot lately.
Is that so? And seems to be having fun.
And was happily playing with a killer whale plush toy I had bought for her. Is Tom okay? He's not bothering you by going fishing all the time, is he?
Not at all. Tom goes fishing almost every week. It's a sign he's doing well.
The truth was he wasn't going fishing at all, but spending his time lazing around or going to the casino. I couldn't tell her that, so I desperately covered it up. Despite his previous good money management, lately, he's been squandering money on casinos and lotteries. As long as he's okay, Mary said as she sipped her coffee. The sun was warm enough to make one slightly sweat, signaling the end of winter. I watched Mary and Anne, wishing this moment could last forever. But my wish was in vain as reality only got worse.
Give me some money, Mom.
When I got home, Tom was demanding money in an irritated tone. What for? What happened?
It's the casino. They've got this new slot machine, and I lost everything. I need to go back and win.
Stop it. No more casinos, no lotteries.
Give me the money now. I need it to get back at them.
He snatched my bag, took some money from my wallet, and dashed out. It all happened so fast, I was left speechless. Terrifying. That feeling came later. My bag and the emptied wallet were thrown carelessly on the hallway floor. I just sat down, powerless. Why has it come to this? Will I never see the lively and vibrant Tom again? Am I doomed to spend my days with a declining Tom? With that despair, the days and then weeks passed. The frequency of Tom's outings and the amount of money he demanded increased. Sometimes I would find my wallet lighter than it should be. I couldn't leave my wallet at home without worry anymore. Thinking it a good opportunity, I started using electronic payments I learned at my cashier job, carrying no cash. I was happy about accumulating points, but when Tom found out I wasn't carrying cash, he exploded again.
Why not? It's just some pocket money. Why don't you get a job? Don't mess with me. Give me the money.
He kept demanding money, spending it all on gambling. When the money was gone, he would shout and scream for more. I feared it might escalate to violence. I was so worn down, I lost the energy to meet with my children. Gradually, I saw less and less of Mary and Anne, using my part-time job as an excuse. After about a year of this exhausting routine, Mary contacted me.
It's almost your birthday, right? Let's all get together next Sunday.
According to Mary, the grandchildren were planning another surprise for this year. Looking at the calendar, the annual birthday celebration was just around the corner. I hadn't even realized it. Given Tom's current state and my own condition, I couldn't feel like celebrating. I wanted to decline. But contrary to my true feelings, the idea lifted my spirits. The thought of my children and grandchildren wanting to celebrate with me made me happy. For just that one day a year, I too wanted to be lively and happy. That's what I found myself thinking.
Thank you. I'll keep that day open then.
I haven't spoken a word about Tom to them. As long as I keep quiet, and as long as Tom doesn't meet anyone, they won't find out. No need to worry them. That's what I decided, to pretend everything was fine with Tom just for the day of the celebration.
Tom and I are living happily as ever. That's what I'll say.
I murmured to myself when Tom wasn't around, convincing myself. After Mary's call, I started cleaning up the house bit by bit. It would be troublesome if there was no space to step in this room when more than 10 people gathered. I gathered all the dust-covered delivery boxes and threw them out with the trash. The bundles of lottery tickets thrown in the trash can were also bagged and discarded. I vacuumed while Tom was out because he would yell that it was noisy. I cleaned carefully, considering the birthday party was coming up. And then, the day arrived. It was a clear, calm day. About an hour before the children and grandchildren were to arrive, Tom left. When he found out about the birthday party the day before,
It's too noisy. Cancel it.
he had shouted.
I can't cancel it. Everyone's already made plans. Are you kidding me?
He then raged in his room for a while. Just a short while ago, after snatching some money from me, he went off to the casino. I felt a bit relieved. This way, Tom wouldn't have to meet any of the other family members. All that was left was to wait for everyone to arrive. Not long after Tom had left, the children and grandchildren started to arrive one by one. Being wished a happy birthday by everyone filled my heart. 9 grandchildren, each of them, celebrated with me. I was happy, yet I felt a complex mix of emotions. Was I right to feign happiness for these children? That thought unexpectedly crossed my mind. It's okay, it's just for today. I told myself, fighting off that small sense of guilt. The birthday party started soon after. Appetizers, salads, chicken, and pizza brought by everyone lined the tables. The last to arrive was a birthday cake made by the grandchildren, which Mary brought. The cake was topped with plenty of chocolate, strawberries, and blueberries. In the center, a chocolate plate read "Happy Birthday, Grandma." Its crooked letters endearingly hard to read. The warmth of their effort touched my heart.
How wonderful! Thank you, everyone.
I hugged each of the grandchildren, one by one. Their efforts in preparing this meant the world to me. Lastly, I hugged Anne.
Thank you, Anne.
I put the strawberries on. Her childish words overwhelmed me, and I hugged her again. Mom, you know, Mary said, standing next to Anne. Suddenly, I noticed her belly was swollen, and Mary was happily rubbing it.
Next month, you'll get to meet your 10th grandchild.
The room was so crowded I hadn't noticed. She was already in her final month.
Wow!
Surprise, joy, and an anxiety no less significant than these emotions all surged at once.
Well, I haven't seen you for about a year, so I never got the chance to tell you.
It's a boy.
Live long, Grandma.
Yes, indeed. And hugged me around the neck, leaning in. Everyone present rejoiced and celebrated this happy news. Congratulations. Our family is growing, I'll send a gift, they exchanged various words. Yet, somewhere inside me, I couldn't suppress the complex feelings. In truth, Tom had been continuously taking money from me, depleting my savings. My daily life had become a struggle. I wanted to give Mary a present if I could, but I no longer had the means. I never expected to feel so miserable at such a joyful gathering. Amidst the celebratory mood, I quietly slipped away. I felt so pitiful that I was on the verge of tears. Pretending to go to the bathroom, I went upstairs. Tom's room, with the door half open, caught my eye. What state was his room in now? I slowly opened the door. The room, with the curtains drawn, was dim. Empty beer cans and bottles, lottery tickets scattered everywhere. And fishing magazines left as they were. My business bag was torn and stuffed into the trash can. The fishing rods and other tools, relegated to a corner of the room, were covered in dust. In that devastated room, I stood dumbfounded. Why had it come to this? Tears I had been holding back streamed down my cheeks. Then, I heard a loud noise from downstairs and someone coming up. Turning around in shock, I saw Tom. His eyes, peering through disheveled bangs, gleamed unnervingly. as he spoke in a growling tone.
I lost at the casino. Give me some money. I'm going back.
Enough is enough.
Just give me the money.
I don't have it right now. The grandchildren are here, so please be quiet.
You have money for the grandchildren, but not for me?
I don't have enough to give to the grandchildren either, really.
Lies. You're just treating me like a nuisance.
Tom, furious, advanced on me.
Stop it. I want to give a gift to my new grandchild too, and it's frustrating that I can't. Isn't your own son more important to you?
I slipped past Tom and fled. Finding another room that was open, I entered one usually used for drying laundry, which had a balcony. Looking back, Tom was chasing after me, his eyes bloodshot, swinging his arms wildly.
Money! Give me money!
I went out onto the balcony. If Tom hit me and I fell badly, who knows what could happen. Such an incident might lead to Tom being arrested. This could severely hinder his chances of reintegrating into society. The remaining children and grandchildren would be hurt and saddened. That was absolutely not acceptable. In a moment of desperation, I jumped from the balcony. A fall from the second floor might result in broken bones at worst. Escaping Tom like this seemed a small price to pay. I landed headfirst. The world turning red, blue, then dark. A tremendous shock went through my body, and for a moment, my senses vanished. Alerted by the noise, the children screamed. The grandchildren started crying. And the area became chaotic. From the balcony, I saw Tom peering down. Looking shaken and frightened. He held his head and screamed. A cry heard by his siblings. I don't remember much after that. Tom's cries of regret or sorrow echoed in the distance. When I woke up, I was staring at the ceiling of a hospital room. The doctor told me I had sustained serious injuries requiring 6 months to heal. He scolded me.
Why on earth did you jump from the balcony?
I had fractured my right leg and right wrist, necessitating rehabilitation. Understandably, the children and grandchildren were shocked. They visited me in the hospital when they could, relieved I was alive. Though it was far from a simple matter of being safe, at least my life was spared. Everyone seemed relieved about that. Especially Mary thought her heart would stop. When she visited the hospital, she burst into tears upon seeing me.
Don't ever do something like that again. Mom.
I'm sorry. It seems Tom confessed everything to his siblings that day. This revelation made them aware of our financial and living situation. If you were in trouble, you should have told us. I didn't want to worry you. Worrying would have been far better than this. Mary said, tears streaming down her face, even in front of Anne. Knowing about mine and Tom's situation, the children offered financial and living support. They sympathized with Tom's layoff but strongly criticized his subsequent actions. Tom also seemed to have deeply reflected on his actions. He worked hard to find re-employment and luckily secured a position at a small real estate company. After securing the job, Tom started visiting me in the hospital. He entered the room, shrinking in apology. Mom. I'm sorry for all the trouble. His hair was neatly combed, his beard cleanly shaved. Dressed in a clean suit and tie, he looked like he was about to make a fresh start. I was surprised to see a slightly brighter atmosphere around him.
People can change, can't they?
Don't get all sentimental on me.
But how did you change so suddenly?
Tom hesitated a little, then, looking down shyly, said, That day, when you tried to escape from me by jumping from the balcony. Yes. At that moment, I thought I had no other choice. Watching you disappear as she fell from the balcony, everything I had done flashed before my eyes in an instant. Tears welled up in Tom's eyes.
And then I came to my senses, wondering what I had done.
My jumping must have been a huge shock to Tom. Though it was a drastic measure, it could also be considered a risky choice. I'm sorry. I won't do anything like that again.
That's my line. I'll take proper care of you, Mom, so don't leave me behind.
True to his words, Tom changed his attitude and returned to the energetic person he was before being laid off. My injuries healed well, and after being discharged from the hospital, I continued to live with Tom. I no longer intend to be angry with Tom. Both Tom and I are in a better situation now. Later, surrounded by our children and grandchildren, we also celebrated my discharge from the hospital.
This time, we'll celebrate grandly,
Mary said, seemingly having rallied the siblings. By the time I was discharged, Mary's baby had been born, increasing the grandchildren to 10. A little boy with adorable hands. All I wish for is that he lives a healthy, happy, and prosperous life.